I'm Bo Moore with IGN, and I'm here at PlayStation for the first hands-on with PSVR2. Let's dive in. PlayStation VR2 has a similar headset design to its predecessor, with a band that rests on the crown of your head and hugs the nape of your neck. This gives it a nice weight distribution that doesn't feel front-heavy like some VR headsets. On the back of the band is a button that slides it out when pressed, and there's also a dial that lets you tighten the band further if necessary. There's also a button on the face mask that lets you slide it in or out, making the headset easy to put on and then adjust into a comfortable position. And there's ample room inside to accommodate glasses. Once the headset is on, there's a dial on the top left of the face unit that adjusts the lenses in order to make sure everything's in focus. The OLED panels inside offer a 2000 by 2040 per eye resolution at up to 120 Hz. This is the highest resolution available among the mainstream VR headsets and provided an outstanding level of visual fidelity. I didn't notice the dreaded screen door effect at all during my time with the system. This is further aided by something called foveated rendering, which essentially means that the system uses its built-in eye tracking to increase the resolution of whatever you're looking at. PSVR 2 uses 4 cameras built into the headset for inside-out tracking of the controllers and your surroundings. When you first set up your play space, the system will prompt you to slowly look around as it scans the area, including the floor and ceiling, and it designates a safe area for you to play within. From there, you can draw lines on the ground to manually add or subtract from the area, exactly the same as how it's done on Meta's headsets. There's also a button on the bottom right of the headset that activates a pass-through camera, allowing you to see your surroundings and pick up your controllers. Speaking of controllers, their design is relatively similar to those of PC VR headsets. Each has a thumbstick and 2 primary input buttons, as well as a PlayStation and options button on each. For triggers, there's an L2 and R2 on each controller, which are activated by your index fingers and serve as the primary trigger for guns and other handheld devices. R1 and L1, meanwhile, rest underneath your middle and ring fingers and are used to articulate gripping items. The controllers also have capacitive capabilities, letting them sense whether or not you're touching the controller even if you're not pressing a button. This is relatively similar to the Valve Index's Knuckles controllers, though I found that the finger tracking was not quite as accurate as Valve's implementation. Valve's controllers also have a strap across the back of your hand that holds the controller in place if you completely open your palm, whereas the PSVR 2 controllers require you to at least grip them slightly at all times. This was most noticeable while playing The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, where simply closing my hand wasn't enough to grip a weapon, and instead I had to hold down that L1 or R1 bumper with my middle and ring fingers. The button isn't particularly hard to press, but having to keep pressure on it for an extended period of time, like when you're holding a gun or a knife, started to cause my hand to cramp and tire after playing for more than 20 minutes or so. The controllers also feature the same haptic feedback and adaptive triggers as the PS5's DualSense controller. Unfortunately, neither of these really stood out to me during the game demos that I played. All of the developers that I talked to mentioned plans for implementing both features in their games, but aside from Horizon Call of the Mountain, they weren't yet present in the demo builds that I played. And then in Horizon, I also didn't particularly notice the triggers doing anything special, but I will say that the section that I played only used the bow and arrow, so I didn't have any other weapons to compare the feeling with.
Right on target!
The developers told me that other weapons later in the game would further leverage the triggers, such as a large mounted ballista that would feel heavy to pull. In addition to the controllers, the headset itself also has haptic feedback built in. Again, this was most noticeable for me playing Horizon VR, and I found the feature to be a nice addition to the haptic landscape, though I mostly just noticed it when taking damage or otherwise being tossed around. It wasn't distracting or uncomfortable at all, but I didn't particularly feel like it added a layer of immersion that I couldn't live without. I suppose that, like the DualSense's haptics, its implementation will vary from game to game and will all depend on how much effort the developers put into utilizing it. The headset also doesn't have integrated audio and instead leaves you to rely on either your TV sound or speaker sound or a pair of headphones, either connected wirelessly to your PS5 or via 3.5mm headphone jack on the PSVR 2 headset. I found this solution to be a bit of a letdown compared to the Valve Index's spatial off-ear audio, since it meant that I needed a pair of headphones if I wanted spatial audio. Personally, I felt that the headset and headphones combination to be a bit bulky and cumbersome, and it made it harder to get the PSVR 2 into the perfect position in front of my eyes. PlayStation VR2 thankfully feels like a modern entry into the VR landscape, with top-notch visual fidelity and comfortable ergonomics. Its haptics and adaptive triggers, if implemented well, will be a welcome addition to the immersive experience. As with all new pieces of hardware, the question now falls to whether there will be enough games to make the investment worth it. First-party games like Horizon Call of the Mountain certainly help assuage those fears. And while nothing has been announced yet, I would be shocked if the outstanding Half-Life Alyx didn't also make its way to the platform. The other key question is price. The original PSVR launched at $399, and considering the hardware on offer here, I wouldn't be surprised to see PSVR 2 launch at $499, especially considering the inflation-related price increases that recently hit both the MetaQuest 2 and the PS5 itself in many territories. Still, for PS5 owners who want an easy, that is a non-PC based, way to access a high-end VR experience, PSVR 2 is very promising. For more on PSVR 2, check out the trailer for the PSVR 2 versions of No Man's Sky and Resident Evil Village. And for everything else in the world of games and tech, stick with IGN.